So you're stuck. And look, I get it. It's frustrating, and I promise you, I understand because I see it almost every day, engaging in conversations online, exchanging comments, and things like that. But you're trying to get started with programming, and you're kind of at a roadblock because you're right at the beginning and you're just not sure what to do next. So, first of all, I just wanted to say that you're already doing the right thing, taking a first step, trying to look at some videos and stuff online, just like this one right now. And a lot of people don't even get that far because they self sabotage and don't even get started. So, just a quick reminder to yourself, good job for getting started, because, like I said, a lot of people don't even take that first step. So, this video is absolutely intended for beginner programmers, and I'm going to try to give you some tips with getting started with programming. So, from what I've experienced from engaging with people online in conversations, is that a lot of people focus on like the language they need to start with, right? You spend so much time trying to ask around like what's the best language? How do I know like if I should pick Python or C or C++ or Java or C Sharp? There's tons of languages. And the more you ask around, the more answers you get. You might start to see themes like people saying, well, if you start with Python, it's the easiest language, right? I'm not making claims here, just what I hear people saying all the time. Or I've seen people say start with C and C++, and I think their motivation is because you can focus on just like basic programming principles, like some of your algorithms and data structures and stuff like that. But I think that's the wrong place to start. And I think that's the wrong place to start because, in my opinion, when people are asking the question, what language should I start with? The answers that I see are almost always just people's opinions, right? Like, I like using C Sharp a lot. And if I were the typical person online and someone came to me and said, hey, what language should I start with? I'm going to say C Sharp because I think it's awesome. I use it for almost everything. Why wouldn't I tell someone to use a language that I'm really familiar with? So I think it's the wrong place to get started. I think it's an early thing you want to figure out, but I think there's a step that you want to take before that. So if you've been stuck trying to pick that first language, asking around, getting all these answers, I hope this part is what's going to help you progress to there. So when people ask me, what language should I start with? I always ask them back one question, and that is, what do you want to build? Right? Because when people ask me what language they should start with, the reality is I can't give them a good answer unless I know more about what they want to do. So to give you some examples of what this could look like, if someone answered back my question and said, well, I really just want to like learn some programming concepts, right? I don't even think I want to build anything. I just want to be familiar with it. Then I might say something like Python or something just really simple to read might be great, right? You can reduce the load, like the cognitive load about having to figure out the language and the syntax and the tooling, and just work with something super simple, super readable. Other people, the opinions about C and C++, like they might say, well, you can just focus on like literally basics of the language, and that might be really good for you to just kind of play around with some programming concepts. A lot of different opinions, right? But you might structure the answer to that question about what language and direct it really just around being simple and straightforward, right? Restrict all the other things. You're not looking about, what platform it can work on and how widely used it is. No one cares in that case if you just want to learn some programming concepts and get familiar with it. Now, if someone said, I want to make, mobile applications, or I want to make websites, or I want to make video games, or whatever, right? The answers start to change. I'm not going to go listing out all of the languages and what I think they're optimized for. There are tons of resources online with a quick search that can help guide you in that direction. So, for example, if you wanted to build websites, you could do a quick search online and just say, like, programming languages or programming languages and frameworks for building websites. And you'd get a lot of ideas. You'd see a bunch of examples. You'd see a lot of JavaScript, TypeScript. You'd see React, you'd see Angular. You'd start to see these keywords coming up a lot, and that might put you in the right direction to start looking at different programming languages and frameworks that you could use. So I hope you can already see that if someone answered to you and said, oh, just use Python because I love Python, or just use Java because I love Java, and then you went to go build a website and you wanted to start searching that and you're looking online, you might feel like you're trapped a little bit, right? Like, okay, well, I have to find Java and I have to find website stuff. And it's why I'm searching Java and I'm only seeing JavaScript. Like, what's going on here? Like, you're not picking a language that's necessarily tailored to the use case. Yes, you can build websites with either of those things, but what you're going to run into are probably a lot of other things that are a little bit more, better suited for doing that. So your first step before jumping into picking the programming language is trying to figure out what you want to do with programming. So if you want to go around asking this question to try getting some insight, I highly recommend you lead with, hey, I would like to go accomplish X, whatever that is, just learn the basics. I'd like to build websites. I'd love to build servers, whatever. I'd like to build the thing. I'd like to do the thing. Could you please recommend some programming languages for me? On top of that, I think if you want to add into that question, if you're asking around, if you're on Reddit or Facebook or wherever, if you're asking that, try to offer up other suggestions you've seen already, right? Try to do some of that research yourself. And I think that will help you get a lot better answers if you're asking around and you can demonstrate to others, like, I've seen a couple of these things. Can you help elaborate on them and explain to me if I'm on the right path? So step 1, try to figure out what you want to do with programming. Step 2 is then trying to identify that programming language and framework that you're going to be using. Now, your journey from this point on compared to someone else could look completely different based on what you're trying to do. For the person that really just wanted to work on, different programming concepts, like some fundamentals just to get introduced to it, they might use an online compiler, right? They could sit there in a browser, play around with some code, looking at, just articles online explaining, like, here's how you would loop through an array, like really simple stuff. Here's how this algorithm works. Here's how stacks and queues work. You could spend a lot of time doing that. However, if your goal is truly just to jump into building things, I've seen a lot of people have success, just kind of skip some of those early steps. And I'm not saying this works well for everyone, but they skip some of the really primitive things and they start looking at code and frameworks that are already working. They start with really simple examples and they go, hey, here's code for a website. I have no idea what it does. Right? And I wouldn't expect anyone to if you've never done it before. But they get it. They're like researching how they can get it running. Now, all of a sudden, they have this website running on their computer, and they go, cool. Well, I see this text, and I see this text in the code. I'm going to change that. I see this button on the website, and I see that when I click it, it's doing this thing. And they start exploring and kind of working with code. Your journey could look like that. In fact, just to give you an example of how well this works, when I kicked off this channel at the beginning of 2023, I had a close friend from high school that was trying to help out with some video editing. He was self-proclaimed not a programmer, didn't want to say that he knew anything about programming, and he was right. He had never taken any official courses or anything on programming. He had no idea about the basics and fundamentals of writing code, data structures, algorithms, but you know what? He's actually having no problem at all putting programs together now. Why? Because he ended up taking the approach that worked for him, starting with some websites, starting with some other code that he saw, getting it from other sources, playing around with it, and learning by being hands-on. So where I'm going with this is after you pick the language and the framework you want to use, how you try to learn most effectively for you is going to be very individual. So when you start having other people tell you this is the best way to do it, right? Like, you need to go take a boot camp. You need to go watch all of these videos online. You need to go buy this book. All of that kind of stuff is someone directing you how to learn best. I'm a little bit guilty of this because I think the best way to learn is doing hands-on stuff and building projects. And I recommend this because I think most people are in fact trying to get to a point where they're building software and not just focused on the theoretical learning aspects. However, I could be totally wrong, and if I was telling people to just go build projects and they said, look, I don't care about making websites and mobile applications, I really just wanted to have some understanding about programming, then my direction that I would tell them to go in is actually kind of misleading. So I think this step, which is part 3, is really critical for you which is understanding how you learn best. And that might mean trying a few things if you don't already know, right? You're already on YouTube watching this video, so you might be inclined to watch videos and learn that way. If that's the case, feel free to subscribe to this channel because I'm hopeful that I can help you in your journey in programming. If you find that reading is most effective, I have a website and lots of articles there. You might want to check that out too. Now, aside from all the shameful plugging, the point of this is that you have to figure out how you learn best. There's lots of amazing content creators making videos, posting articles. There are tons of books that you could go look at if that's most effective for you. And if you're interested in building projects, which is what I personally recommend, there are lots of opportunities for you to pick really simple things to start with, or take more complicated things, break them down into smaller pieces, and just try building something. After you've figured out this for yourself, the next part is investing time. And this is going to be the last part that I touch on for this video, but I think it's really important. If you came to this video hoping that I was going to share some secrets about the absolute best shortcut to go be an expert coder in 2 weeks or something like that, here, like, I'm going to put a link and go buy this course, and after 4 weeks you'll be the best programmer in the world. I hate to disappoint you, it does not work that way. Now, some people do learn faster than others, some people learn slower, people learn differently. That's not the point I'm trying to make. The point that I'm trying to make is that there's a lot of information online that I feel like is misleading people that want to get into programming, that if they pay for something, they will automatically reach like expert status in a very short amount of time. The reality is, programming is just like any other skill that you're trying to build. If you wanted to be a basketball player, and I said, hey, just pay me $100 and in 2 weeks I can make you the best basketball player in the world, that's going to be very misleading, right? You're going to need to spend a lot of time training and playing basketball to be really good. That was a pretty random example because I'm absolutely terrible at basketball. But if I used a better example and said, hey, look, I could make you really strong at squatting and bench pressing because that's what I'm into, I couldn't promise you that, no matter how much money you paid me, that in a couple of weeks you'd be able to do an amazing job at it. I've been doing that kind of stuff for 20 years now, and I'm still kind of mediocre at it. I like to think I'm pretty good, but I have a long way to go still. And programming is no different, right? I've been programming just as long as I've been going to the gym. I've been doing it for about 20 years now, and I'm still learning things when I'm programming. Do I consider myself an expert? In some things, I feel like I'm pretty good. In other things, I have a ton to learn. And I think that it's really important just to remind yourself that everything that we're trying to get good at takes time, and you need to invest that time in practice so that you can get better. Now, I don't want you to interpret what I just said as paying for resources is not going to help you. That's not the point I'm trying to make. In fact, I think that you can pay for resources, and they absolutely can help you. I just want to set realistic expectations for you so that you don't get disappointed if you're not getting the progress that you're expecting to get just for paying for things. So using the other examples I was talking about, if you had a basketball coach, yes, paying for a basketball coach could absolutely help. If you wanted to pay for a personal trainer to help you with your squat and your bench press, yes, absolutely that could help. And paying for courses, paying for mentoring, paying for boot camps, or whatever it happens to be, books, all of that kind of stuff could absolutely help you with getting better at programming. But none of those things, no matter how much money you spend, are going to shortcut all of the work that you need to do to truly become an expert. So don't let that discourage you, because programming is absolutely a journey. Technology is always changing. In fact, this year alone, from trying to put content together, it's forced me to actually go relearn a lot of stuff in C# and the .NET ecosystem that I just kind of took for granted, but it's evolved so much in the 15 years or so that I've been using it, that if I don't go relearn some things, I can't make content effectively. So instead of being discouraged by having to learn things and having to spend time, try to flip that scenario around, right? Like, you have a lot of opportunity and a lot of really cool things to learn, and there's always going to be more really cool things you can learn and apply in the things that you're trying to build. Okay, to wrap this video up, what was step one? Well, step one is not picking a programming language. Step 1 is trying to think about what you want to do with programming. From there, you can better answer the question of what programming language do you start with. The third part that I discussed was, now that you have that programming language picked and you have an idea of the direction you want to head for building things or how you want to apply programming, is figuring out the best way that you learn. You might know this already, you might have to spend some time trying some different things out. And the final step was that understanding that you're going to have to actually spend time, invest that time, and practice to get better at programming. So congrats again on taking some of your first steps with getting started with programming, because like I said in the very beginning of this video, a lot of people self-sabotage and they don't get this far. They feel like they're not good at math, they're not smart enough, whatever other excuse, and they go, too bad, I'll never be a programmer. But here you are watching this video and trying to make your progress right in the beginning. So I hope that you found this helpful. I'm excited for you to start your journey, and I'm hopeful that if you enjoy this kind of content, you can subscribe and find my other videos helpful in the journey that you're just starting on. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.